Alright, so here's my 1987 Toyota 4Runner. It's been converted into a camper. It's a 22RE 5-speed with lockers front and rear, 4.7 transfer case, dual gas tanks, winch, upgraded suspension, and essentially a whole house in the back. So the cool thing about this camper is that it's built right into the factory topper, so it looks pretty clean. It's just held down with these clamps, and then it has two 400-pound linear actuators. So you just flick a switch and it just starts lifting right up. With the angle that they're starting at, and given that it's their 400-pound actuators, I calculated it out, and you can hold a 500-pound load centered in the front 1/3 of the roof. So you could easily put mountain bikes and kayaks and a bunch of gear on the roof, and the top will still go up and down. You don't have to like take things off when you go to sleep at night. You don't have to try and push them up. It's super easy. I have a huge aluminum box that mounts right on the roof that I'll include with it. I also have a big roof basket for firewood, chairs, all that type of stuff that I'll include. And the actuators have built-in limit switches so that they stop when they get to the right height. So that way you just flick a switch and you can go do whatever you want and come back and it'll be all up. The way that this camper was built is, it's just a factory topper, this whole lower part, and then essentially from here up, I just cut a giant rectangle in the roof and built a steel tube frame. It's mostly, 3/4 by 3/4 065 wall square tube, and then these are 3/4 by 1.5 inch 065 wall for this like long strip, just because there's going to be a lot of large like bending moment on it at this end. So it's pretty rigid. It's pretty lightweight compared to the normal topper. We were able to get it on here with 3 people, and we didn't have to work too hard. It doesn't feel that much heavier than a normal topper. It's all covered in 1/4 inch plywood over the steel frame, and then it is fully fiberglassed in, so for sealing and to make it have like these nice rounded edges to kind of match in with the, the looks of the factory topper. I did block off this back window and this back window here, just because stock, they like kind of curve over, and I was worried that if I built the frame right on top of the glass, it would have broken it, and I wanted a window with a screen in it, so I was able to just put a nice RV window in there. It was my first time doing fiberglass, so it's not absolutely perfect in some areas. You can see kind of the weave in some spots, and especially in some of these like more complex areas, there was like some tiny little holes or gaps that I filled in with silicone, but all in all, it's very rigid and waterproof, and it looks good. But if you start looking at it at close, it's not factory perfect. It is all coated in white paint. I did the resin, and then just a primer, and then like a heavy duty Rust-Oleum white paint, which seems to be holding up really well. The walls of the pop top, it's a sunbrella, like a marine grade awning fabric that's pretty waterproof and really breathable, and has really good UV resistance, and it's quilted with, I think it's Primaloft or Thermalite, one of those fancy like outdoor jacket insulations in it. And then the insides of it, you could see it's kind of this fun gray pattern. It's not like too loud, but just something to kind of look nice. And it's fully sewn together, one piece, clamp all the way around, and it even, there's the piece even continues in the front here. So it's fully sealed up with the insulation. It keeps a little bit of warmth in there, and it isolates you a little bit more from the world, so you're not hearing everyone around you if you're like camping in a campground or a parking lot. We did spray it down with a waterproofing material, like a Nick wax, I think is what they call it, just to kind of help bead water off in heavy rainstorms. And I'd recommend maybe doing that every year or two, depending how much you're using it. It does have an elastic band around it, so that when it does close, it does pull like the top kind of end. However, I do recommend like stopping it halfway through when you're closing it, just to make sure that it is going in the right way, just because you'd hate to damage it or have it get bound up. Let's see what else on the outside. So the roof is super strong. You can stand up on there, no issues whatsoever. And it has these 3 roof bars that are just bolted on with 4 bolts each. The front 2 are 1.5" 1 20 wall square tube, so they're super stout. The back one's 0.65 wall square tube. Just because you don't want to put as much weight up towards the top, you want to try and keep your weight as far forward as possible so that the actuators have an easier time lifting it. I built these bars that just bolt right onto the side, so if you're off-roading it and you come up next to a tree, the tree will slide past. It won't get hung up on the bars, and it won't hit the fiberglass or damage anything. I have some grip tape on there because it gets a little slippy if it's wet, so you don't fall and slip. We have a big vent fan, which is super nice, and then there's 2 30-watt solar panels as well. On the outside of the truck, it is the factory red color that polished up really nice. Still has lots of life left in it. There's no like peeling clear coat or anything like that. It does have the factory front bumper still, but I remade the mounts and rebuilt the inner cross member in here so that I could fit this 9,000-pound winch really snugly up in there. It's welded on super strong into the frame, all gusseted in. There's also a front tow hitch that you could put a motorcycle on the front, but given that it's such a small truck, it looks a little funny with the dirt bike on it. I also have these big HID lights up here, which are great at night. They're tied into the high beams, so you can have them on with your high beams, and if another car's coming, you just flick the high beams off and the off-road lights turn off. You don't have to like flick 2 switches, which is kind of nice. Again, we have more of the script here. There's some wax on it from when we just waxed the truck. It should come off in a couple washes, but just so that you can climb up on the roof and not slip and hurt yourself. We did these cool retro stripes on there. We have these 2" by 2" 120 wall square tube rock sliders that work really well. They're up nice and close to the body, but they help just stop from totally caving in the door if you were to slide into a rock. They're pretty strong. They're fully welded to the frame and gusseted to the frame, so you could weld kick-out tubes on these if you really wanted. We're running 31 by 10.5" R15 BF Goodrich tires on some 2nd gen aluminum wheels. They do good. You don't have any worries about breaking axles with these smaller tires, which is nice, but it looks good, and none of the fenders had to be cut, so it still has all the original body panels on there. On the outside here, this is your furnace, intake and exhaust. We have the snorkel up here, which is actually hooked up to the airbox, so it does work. We have these exterior, like, overland off-roady lights on all the sides of the truck. They're LED, so they're pretty bright, and you can leave them on most of the night and they don't kill much power. We have our exterior shower here, which I can open up. So you could take a a nice shower outside. There's not a hot water heater in it, so it's nice on a sunny day or at the beach or when there's no one around. Let's see. Oh, we also have our electrical plug-in here so that you can charge the camper batteries pretty easily at home, and then our gas fillet. At the back here we have our propane tank for the stove and the furnace. It's just on a simple swing out here. It's just tied into the body, so it's, you know, lightweight, pretty low profile, and has these these locking quick release straps that are on there. If I'm really off-roading it hard, I put an extra ratchet strap around there just because I would hate for it to fall off, but they're on there totally fine for just normal driving. It is a standard barbecue propane tank, so if you run on a propane, it's really easy to exchange at almost any gas station. It lasts about a week or two if you're camping in a really cold place and running the heater every night. If it's for like summer camping, it'll last essentially all summer if you're only running the heater a few times. And the stove, maybe about once or twice a day. We also built this back bumper on here. It's a 2x4 square tube 120 wall tied into the frame and the hitch. It's a really good mounting spot if you did want to do a swing out tire carrier, or it's just a nice clean simple look. We do have this hole here so that you can still use the factory tire carrier pull down thing. You stick a big rod up in there and twist it and the tire comes down on a hoist. So now I'll talk about the engine on here. It's just a standard 22RE. Everything in here pretty much, and everything almost on the truck, has been replaced at around 40,000 miles and sooner. This engine only has 40,000 miles on it. It's just a, you know, generic rebuilt, built to stock specs, nothing super fancy, but super reliable. It works, makes good power, it just passed emissions, gets good gas mileage. When we have the truck fully loaded up with the roof racks on it and a huge box on the roof, and trying to do, you know, probably doing like 75, 80 down the highway, we found that we were getting around 14 miles to the gallon, but without anything on the roof, a little bit better of an aerodynamic profile, we found that we were getting upwards of 18, 19 miles to the gallon. We have a Odyssey style AGM battery in this nice enclosure so that it can't move around at all. Here's your power cable for the winch. It's not hooked up just because I don't use the winch that much. And if you do use the winch, here's the plug-in for it, for the like clicky remote. And the winch controller like relay box is tucked down in here. For the aftermarket electronics, like the off-road lights, we have them all in this nice fuse panel. We also have a switch here so that you can turn on these LED lights under the hood in case you gotta do any work in here at night. It's super simple. Here's our battery isolator for the house batteries. So you can turn this on when you're driving, and the alternator will run current from the main battery all the way back and help charge the house batteries. What else? We did new fuel injectors, new ignition system. Most of the sensors are new EGR system, new MAF, upgraded aluminum radiator, just a new fan clutch and fan shroud. Here's the inlet tube for the snorkel, and it goes right into the air box on a V-band clamp, so it's super tight and waterproof. Let's see, this does have air conditioning on it, which is great. It's been converted to R134, and we recharged it about 2 years ago, and it's doing great, nice and cold. Upgraded these all to stainless tubes from 22RE Performance so they don't burn or rust out. We got the LCE tubular header, just for a little bit of power, and it's a lot more reliable than the factory ones they like to crack. New brake master and booster from a second gen V6 4Runner, so they're quite a bit bigger, and we have matching calipers and rotors to match these. The brakes on this thing are super good. Oh, for the heater, the factory heater core disconnect switch, we'll call it, got corroded and wore out on this thing just after, I don't know, what is this, like well over 30 years old. So I just changed it out to this ball joint. I've had this on my other trucks, and I just like the simplicity of it. So in the summer, when you don't want the heat on at all, you just turn it to off, and that way you know there's no coolant going to the heater core, and you can then optimize your air conditioning system. And then let's say in the winter you want the heater going, just turn this on, then you know there's going to be coolant going to the heater core. You're going to get as much heat flowing into the heater core as possible. Pretty easy. I just kind of change that as the seasons go. Also in the engine bay, here's your diff breathers for the front and rear axles, so that you can forward in water and not worry about water getting into the oil. I have a Redline full synthetic shockproof gear oil in this thing, which is pretty pricey, so you don't want to, you know, get it filled with water and have to be changing that out all the time. Here's the engine running. It has a bit of valve noise when it's cold, but once it warms up in a couple minutes, it goes away and pretty much just runs like a sewing machine. It's running great. I check the oil in it pretty regularly, and it seems to go through about a quart of oil maybe every 2,000 to 3,000 miles. So, you know, just gotta check on it. It seems to be normal with most 22 REs. But other than that, it runs great. Seems to have decent power compared to all the other 22 REs I've had. You know, just a nice simple 22 RE, easy to work on. Also up here, the headlights are on their own relay system. The factory switches have a lot of resistance in them, which limits a lot of current flow to the headlights, so they get pretty dim. So this is an aftermarket system. I think this is the Roger Brown 4-crawler kit, and it basically just isolates the whole headlight system on its own switches so that it gets maximum power to the headlights and keeps them nice and bright. Additionally, the headlights have these nice rock guards on there, and they're upgraded to the H4, just the bulb style instead of the full sealed beam, so they're pretty bright. So this is the front suspension on the truck. It's utilizing all factory geometry, but it's super beefed up and optimized. Starting with the steering, this is the Total Chaos idler arm that we have on here, and then I'm pretty much replicated Total Chaos's King Kong steering system for this truck, which is utilizing 3/4 inch Heims for the tie rods with quarter wall sleeves for the for the tie rods, and then the center link is super beefed up with quarter wall 1 inch DOM and 3/8 plate. So extreme overkill for the steering on this. We also have a skid plate in the front here. This is just 14 gauge, but it's got some different supports on the back out of 1/8 inch strap material, and it's supported by this 120 wall 1.5 inch round tube that's welded from the frame down to the front suspension, and there's a supporting member in there as well, so it should be super strong if you were to hit something at speed. On the knuckle here we have a double shear for the tie rod, and then the spindle we have this huge 3/8 plate gusset in there just so that nothing will bend. The hardware has all been upgraded to grade 12.9 just so you don't have to worry about it breaking. The factory hardware, I think it's a grade, it's what is it, whatever the equivalent of grade 8 is, which is pretty strong, but it's not as strong as 12.9, and I've seen a lot of the desert dudes who are really ripping on these trucks, sometimes these bolts will shear or rip out the threads, and I just didn't want to worry about that. We have newish, what are they, Pro Forged ball joints on both sides, which are supposedly pretty stout. I've never had any issues with them. They seem good. Newish CV axles. Boots are all in good shape. They work great. I've never had any issues with CV axles on these trucks. I don't know. If you're on the forums, a lot of guys seem to have issues, but never seem to have any problems. They always seem pretty reliable. The bump stops and the droop stops I changed out to these low profile ones just to maximize up travel and down travel. Right now this thing's cycling about 7 inches of travel on the front, which is a lot better than the 4 that it cycles stock. But if you were to remake these bump stops, like move them up or redo the droop stop, you could easily get several more inches of suspension travel onto this. I just didn't do that because I was worried about maxing out the CV and the ball joints. I just didn't really know where the mechanical limit was, and I decided I should play it safe with this. The lower control arms are stock, but they've been fully plated an 1/8 inch plate along the bottom to give protection against rocks and adding in some extra rigidity along. I changed out the shock mounts with a 1/4 inch shock mounts. They're a lot less flimsy than the stock ones. If you come up here, we're running pretty big Bilstein. What are these? I think there's like the 65 series, the 5165 series. It's their smooth body reservoirs, so there's a lot of oil in there and they stay nice and cool on bumpy roads. I think in the front this one's like a 7 or 8 inch travel shock, so way more travel in the shock than we're actually utilizing, so you don't have to worry about ever bottoming out the shock or hurting it. It is valved to 360/80, which seemed pretty good for the weight of this vehicle and the motion ratio with the factory control arms. I built these big shock coops in here on a DOM, and it's welded to this 1/4 inch plate, which is welded to the frame, and then again gusseted into the frame in the back. It's tied into this body mount gusset that I made, and then again gusseted further. I've seen a lot of guys with their shock coops rip off, and I didn't want that to happen. These are stout enough that if you did want to remove the torsion bars and go to like a coilover shock, they could totally take the abuse in it. You would probably have to clearance the upper control arm a little bit, but it wouldn't be too difficult. Or if you went to, let's see, like a Total Chaos long travel kit, then you could fit some big like Desert Racer style shocks in here and have some cool off-road whoop killer 4Runner Toyota camper thing if you desired. I am running Old Man Emu torsion bars in the front. They're great. They're super squishy and soft. It flexes really well in the front. Drives down the road like a Cadillac. They're great. I'd recommend them to anyone with one of these trucks. Let's go around to the other side. So on this side we have a newer steering box in here. This pitman arm it's a factory pitman arm, but it's plated with 3/8 plate, and then it goes to a 3/4 inch uniball. So super strong, never gonna have any issues with it. There's those big tubular headers, as you can see. We also have a bomb-proof engine mount on this side, just to help stop the engine from cranking over, especially with the 4/7 gears in the T-case. It's a little shaky, but it's pretty broken, and there's a factory mount on the other side, so the vibrations aren't too bad, but it's definitely a little bit more sporty than a stock truck. Okay, looking at the back of the front suspension, we got this cross member that I built in here. It comes out so you can still take the diff out, but it's basically just to help protect your oil pan and protect the front diff from any rocks. and also helps reinforce the frame a lot. On some of these, if you jump them or like hit some, big hot potholes really fast, the frames will spread out in the front. So this just helps reduce the possibility of that. This front cross member here is plated with, I think, 3/8 plate on the front, and then 1/4 inch plate on the back and the bottom. So it's super strong. You shouldn't have any issues with that. For the cam adjuster, or the camber adjusting cammed bolts in here, all the little tabs are reinforced in with 3/8 bar stock, just so that under load they won't like start to bend the side piece here. Usually when these are stock and people have been off-roading them, you'll see them where they've started to wallow out, and it'll make this cammed bolt really loose in there, which means your camber is constantly changing as you're driving or going down the trail, which you don't want. So the alignment should always stay pretty true on these, and it should always be easy for an alignment shop to go and do an alignment, because they don't have to hammer things back or have it all super loose. Default some spiderweb gussets to the back of the bump stops, just kind of just for fun. The front diff is out of a 2nd gen 4Runner. It has 456 gears in it and a Spartan locker. It's a non-ADD, so that's the vacuum actuator. So it doesn't have that on there. You just use the locking hubs, which seem a lot more reliable. What else? Also under here, we have this Bud built cross member, super low profile, a Marlin crawler, heavy duty T-case mount on here, just to stop the transfer case from rocking over under load. And then we have this big 1/4 inch skid plate also with the Bud built cross member, just to help protect everything, and it gives you a lot more clearance over the stock cross member. The stock cross members of these things are a little pathetic for how off-roady these trucks can be. Let's see. Okay. This is probably one of my favorite features on the truck, other than the camper. We got dual stock size gas tanks under here. This gives you about 500 to 600 miles of range, no problem. I just took another factory gas tank and stuck it right under there, so it uses the same stock fuel pump, same stock pickup, same stock skid plate. The exhaust is pretty tight going up around it, and the drive shaft, but it all fits in here. It just refills this tank, so it's not actually tied into the main fuel system. So this won't affect any fueling issues in the future. It just like has one hose that comes out of the factory pump in this and comes over and dumps it in the top of the main tank. I didn't touch any of the main fuel system. And the filler neck just goes to a big T piece and splits off into the main tank and the secondary tank, and no problems at the gas station filling them up. It fills both of them up without like locking out the filler gun or anything. So that's super nice, and you don't have to fill up like multiple gas ports like I've seen on some dual tank setup. It's just like it normally would be, almost as if it was stock. The drive shaft in here is a heavy duty 120 wall Tom Woods drive shaft with 1310 U joints. Super beefy. You can nick it on rocks and not worry, unlike the stock shafts. And the rear third member is a V6 8-inch third member with factory 456 gears, and it has a Spartan locker in it, and it does great. Never had any issues with it. Let's see, that should be about it for here. So at the back here, here's the axle. You can see I added these little trusses to the top here. These are similar to what they have on the dually Toyota rear axles. I then plated the bottom and like these little 1/4-inch thick plates just to help against like rock rash protection. And then it has this heavy duty diff cover welded on there. U-bolt flip kit on both ends. I just did the drum brakes and wheel bearings not too long ago. Oh, we have Old Man Emu heavy duty rear springs, which just ride awesome. They're great with new bushings and the nice Old Man Emu shackles with the anti reversal tabs on them. And the Bilstein shocks, same ones that's in the front. These are the single wall reservoir ones, so they stay nice and cool. They're the same series that's in the front. These ones are quite a bit longer, but they're valved to 255/70, which is great for the solid axle, whereas the ones in the front are valved to 360/80, which is great for the motion ratio on IFS. The front also has Old Man Emu torsion bars, which just ride great. The suspension on this thing is super comfortable and just does great. Super smooth. What else? The brake line back here, changed it out to the longer stainless steel braided one because the factory one's kind of short and at full droop it tugs on it pretty bad. So none of those issues anymore. Let's see if we can see it in here. I changed out the factory portioning valve with a Wildwood aftermarket manual one. The factory one's a little janky and limits a lot of flow to the back brakes, so this one now you can control it pretty nice and get the back brakes to actually work, which is great. Got a full-size 31-inch spare under here. There's this really stout hitch on here that's welded fully to the frame, and the frame is actually plated in 1/4-inch plate all the way up to the front mount of the rear leaf springs. So the back 4 or 5 feet of the frame almost is fully plated and super stout. I've actually towed 7,000 pounds trailers with this with no issues. I mean, it's a bit slow, but it'll tow it. And this does have a 7-pin trailer brake and light mount on there, so you can plug it right in, and the brake controller's inside. There's also a 4-pin in there too, but it's just zip tied up. Also in the back are these huge bump stops. I think they're Daystar. They're giant polyurethane bump stops. They're super squishy. If you hit something hard, it doesn't take out your back. It's pretty refined on a hard hit. Oh yeah, here's the reservoirs on the shock. So now in the cab of the truck, this is the SR5 edition, so it has the nice SR5 seats with adjustable bolsters and all the fancy stuff you can get in 1987. It's pretty clean in here. A few cracks in the dash, but other than that, really nice. The inclinometer and altimeter. This is actually great for when you pull to the campsite. You can level out the vehicle really easy. AC works, heat works. Here's the switch for the battery disconnect to charge up the house batteries when you're driving, and then when you stop you turn it off so you don't kill the truck battery. Upgraded Bluetooth radio. We just put new speakers in this thing, so there's no amp or anything, but it's pretty loud. It's nice. CB radio in here. It goes to the antenna in the back. We got a radio mounted there. This did come with cruise control. It's never worked, and I took the vacuum diaphragm out to fit the snorkel, but I still have it, and I'll give it to you so you can, if you wanted to play with it, I'm sure you could try and get it to work. Everything's still there. These switches here for the auxiliary fuel tank, you flick this switch and it transfers fuel from the auxiliary fuel tank into the main fuel tank so that the main fuel system's not messed with. It's simply just refueling the primary tank. And there's this little red light here that's connected to a float switch in the tank. So when the secondary tank is empty, this red light will come on, and then you know it's empty, you don't want to run the pump anymore, flick the switch off, light goes off, second tank should be filled up, and the primary tank should be filled up, secondary tank's empty, and that'll give you another 250 miles of range, which is awesome. And then this is the light for that HIDs. It does only turn on when the high beams are on, just as a safety. I guess not really safety, but it's nice when you're driving down roads late at night and someone's coming the other way. You can have the high beams and the HID lights on, and if someone comes around a corner at you, you just turn it off real quick and you don't blind them super bad. You don't have to try and fiddle with the switch on the dash. Let's see. Oh, we got this fun shift cover in here. Temperature gauge, just because the stock ones, they read kind of inaccurate. Sometimes I don't really trust them. So this way you know confidently what the temperature of the engine's at on a hot day. It doesn't have any issues, especially with that big radiator up there. You can run the AC and on a hot day and no problems. The transfer case, it is a Marlin crawler 4.7 re-geared, pretty much a rock crawler transfer case in this. So in low range, first gear, this thing drives like a tractor, which is really nice. You just take your foot off the clutch and it just slowly meanders its way up whatever you want. You don't have to feather and fight the clutch or anything. It's really smooth. This is your high range, low range, and this is your 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. The reason that this is here is because it does have a front locker in the truck, and when you have the front locker engaged, like the hubs are locked and you're in 4-wheel drive, everything's locked up, it makes it really hard to, not really hard with these 31s, but it makes it a little tricky to turn, just because everything's kind of starting to bind up. So this way you can still keep it in low range, and if your front hubs are locked, you just slap it in 2-wheel drive and you can turn and maneuver just fine to get to the tough obstacles. And once you get to the tough obstacle, then you slap it in 4-wheel drive, crawl right up it, and then take it out when you're done. With the 31-inch tires, the front locker really hasn't been a big deal. On my other truck that had 37s, it was kind of a pain to drive, but on the 31s it's been fine, even in 4-wheel drive. I probably didn't need to do this, but I don't know, I was worried and didn't want to have to think about doing it later on, so it's nice to have. We also have this aftermarket center console here. I just got a little dust on there. It's a Tuffy one. It's for Suzuki Samurai, but fits in here really well. You got the cup holder, it locks, it's super heavy duty. You can throw whatever valuables you want in there, and it's pretty comfortable. On this truck, there is 373,750 miles, and realistically, because I've changed everything out on this truck, it probably only has 40,000 miles on it, but kind of a true testament to Toyota that this truck still looks pretty good after that many miles, and I'm sure that this thing could go to 1 million if it gets into a caring person's hands, or someone who really appreciates it. Also with the SR5, you got power windows and power locks, which are nice. Another thing I wanted to say about the interior, I had these seats reupholstered about 4 years ago because they were pretty rough. They were supposed to be gray, but this plush material here has kind of got sun faded and turned a slight purple. It looks a little bit more purple in the video than they are in real life, but you may be able to get them dyed back to gray, but they unfortunately did sun fade a little. But the inside fabric, it's really close to the SR5 fabric, and it's really nice and stout. Also, the carpets were changed down in this thing about 4 years ago, and then these are some 3rd gen 4Runner floor mats that I found that fit in here nice. It's in pretty good shape. There's some, that one's a little bit discolored from Moab dirt, but we've really heavily deep cleaned out this interior, and it looks really nice right now. Okay, so this is like your main electrical board for the RV camper side of the truck. It is fully disconnected, or disconnect. Yeah, it's disconnected from the truck side of things, which makes wiring and troubleshooting a little bit easier. You're not going to have any like issues between the two. But here's your whole fuse panel. Everything in it is fused, nicely labeled. Should be easy to diagnose if there was a short or any troubles. Here is your charge controller for the solar panels. Being that they're only 60 watt solar panels, they're good for helping out the batteries and helping run the fridge, but you can't just park this truck for like a month and expect the solar panels to run everything. The idea behind putting the solar panels in here was if I wanted to go backpacking for like 4 or 5 days, I could just keep the fridge running that way my food wouldn't go bad when I was gone. But if you are really heavily using the electronics, you need to drive the truck every couple of days so that the alternator can charge things up. Here's a 1000 watt pure sine wave inverter, so you can charge laptops, tool batteries, most things. I ran my like heat gun and my soldering iron off this thing to wire the whole truck, and it was nice to just be able to do it from inside the truck. Here is your, your little charge info center. It tells you your voltage, how much power you're drawing. There's a big shunt on the ground of the batteries. And here is your full disconnect so that you can turn off the camper batteries if you're parking it for a long time, or if you need to weld something on the truck. And behind this panel is 100 amp hour sealed lead acid battery, and then also in here is another 100 amp hour sealed lead acid battery, both 12 volts. So altogether this is a 12 volt 200 amp hour system, which is more than enough for just having the fridge and inverter and a couple lights. So here's the back tailgate and window, which I think are pretty interesting. I got fed up with the factory window in it because they're notoriously unreliable, and I just didn't want that to break in the middle of nowhere somewhere and have the whole back of the truck open up. So I cut it all out, and then I made this back hatch that's on here. It's just a piece of 14 gauge with a piece of polycarbonate glued in there. And then this is like an RV door style latch, so it locks from the inside, and it's super secure. It's just on some gas struts. It goes up nicely. And then the tailgate here, I don't know if you can see it, but I changed it out, and I changed it so that it's this T-handle that you just twist to open it. Opens up just the same, still using the same latches, but I just remade the mechanism to twist it inside. And then a cool feature about this, we have this locking latch on here on this big cutting board piece. And you just pull it up, and you have a ton of tool storage in here. We stored all our tools and recovery gear and an air compressor and extra fluids and jacks in here, and that way it doesn't have to be hidden in the truck. And then let's say you get stuck and are in a bad spot, you can just come quickly, open up the tailgate, grab your strap out, you don't have to dig for it, which is really nice. So here's the back of the camper. As you can see, we have a couch on this side, and then a little galley on this side with a stove and a sink and storage underneath. And then we have our fridge up there and a little cabinet thing that flips down into a table, and a bunch of headroom in there. This couch, it folds down into a bed. These bars here are just the right length that you can pick this up, move it over, and set it on these tabs, and you put a little pole in up there that it rests on, and it makes a nice bed. It's very comfortable for one person, but we have slept 2 people on there with not too much being on top of each other. You probably have to be pretty good friends to do that. And it's just supported by these custom brackets that I made that just slip in this tube and are held in with these, I think they're like tractor PTO style pins. so they can come out, and that way you don't bonk your head or your feet on them when you're sleeping on it. Underneath here, there's a bunch of storage in there. It even goes back further, like into the fender. That's where we'd keep some spare parts that we weren't really ever accessing. We have this basket in here, but there's a bunch of room in here and a nice carpet. It is all bed linered underneath the carpet, so it should last a long time. We do have this, what is it, 6x9 rear speaker in here that's just wired in mono. Under the galley here, there's this big carpeted in cubby to store foods and goods, and then we have this nice shelf rack that we made in here. The height of this is exactly the height of a Coors Banquet can, so you could fit Coors Banquets or any other 12-ounce beers or cans of soup in there. And then you got some more room under here for, you know, boxed goods. And then it's on these sliding doors. There's an elastic straps so that things don't fall out. Let me get up in here now. Okay. On this side, it slides open. We have one of those 7-gallon aquatainers as our sink water. I don't know if you can see, but it's just on a quick release here with a like a copper pipe that goes all the way to the bottom of the tank. So really easy to put it in and connect, and it's all strapped into the floor, so it's not going to move around on you. And you got your breather there, which you gotta remember to take off when you want to use it. And you have this custom cutting board that I made to fit on the sink, and it has magnets on it to hold them down. Unfortunately, the sink is stainless steel and the magnets do not stick to it, so it works good when you're stopped, but when you're driving around it does fall off, so we just store it under there. And then we have our fancy cereal box trash can. It works great to just put plastic bags in, throw your trash in there. It seals them up nice, and it's all strapped in. The water pump's tucked back in there as well. Let's see, let me turn these lights on. Here we have this nice spice rack that we made. With the lights on a dimmer switch under it. So super fancy. Neodymium magnets on the face here so that you can put knives or whatever you want on there. We used to hold our kettle on this, and an elastic band to hold all your spices and things in there. The sink, you come over to this panel here, flick this switch, pump turns on, sink runs. It's a pretty nice faucet where you can take it out, rinse dishes. You twist this and it has like the nice spray pattern, and then you can twist it more and it'll go to the solid stream. A stainless steel like bar style sink fits in here nice. We have a 2-burner RV stove in here, just runs off the propane. No issues with it. We were a little concerned at first that it would be a little too close to the things around it, but we've had 0 issues. Nothing's seemed to get even remotely hot where there would be an issue. Also, this big drawer in here, it's pretty deep. We fit some like big frying pans and all our cooking gear right in here. And it does lock. Almost all the latches on here lock, just because I found that it was cheaper to buy locking latches than it was to buy the ones without the locks. So there's a lot of keys for this vehicle. Let me talk about this control panel here, if I can get it to, if the light you can get. Okay, so on this control panel here, this is your whole electrical controls for the RV. This arms the actuators just so you don't accidentally bump them, and each actuator is on its own switch. Just because when they're going down, they go at slightly different speeds, so it's nice to kind of be able to toggle each individually so you can get them to close at the same time, or else it gets a little a little kinked. I did have it on one switch at first and it worked, but it was just a little scary. So now they're on 2. Come down, they go back up. Going up, it's not an issue, just to leave them on and walk away. Here's that light for the under the counter. Here's that left outside light. Here's the 2 back outside lights. Here's the right outside light. Here's your water pump. This one's cool. This is tied into the factory radio. I don't know if you can see it turning on there now. And it's all wired in with a bunch of diodes into the radio so that when you are camping, you can run the radio solely off of the camper battery power instead of using any truck battery power. But then when the truck is running, and as long as the switch is off, you can run the radio just off the truck power, not any of the camper battery power. So that's kind of nice. Here we just have a USB charger. And then here is the thermostat for the heater. Let's see if we can get it to turn on. It's really hot in here right now, so it may not kick on. Because it only goes to 90 degrees. It's probably 95 or 100 in here. But it's just like in your house, and because it does exhaust outside, you can just set this at whatever temperature you want, go to sleep. It'll cycle on and off during the night and keep you nice and warm, and you don't have to worry about dying or anything like that. An additional safety feature that we do have is this propane leak sensor. So propane does leak, this will go off. We did test it. And then up on the ceiling there, we have our smoke alarm and carbon monoxide alarm, just for safety. Another point that I did want to make about all the electrical, the wires are all wrapped in this nice material, but they're pretty easy to get to. That way, if you wanted to wire something else in, or you needed to fix something, it's easy to pull apart. You're not going to be like ripping or walls out of things or doing like terrible damage to get to them. You just cut some zip ties, remove a few screws, and panels will come off and the wiring loom will be fully exposed. Coming up now towards the front of the camper, here you have your ARB fridge. I'm not sure what size it is. It's one of the, I think it's the 60 quart. Oh, but it just slides out like that. Let's see if we can get this to focus. There we go. Yeah. It just slides out like that. It's on these sliders down here, and there's a T-handle that you pull up on to release it, slide it all the way out, open up the latch, and there you got your whole fridge inside. It'll fit like well over a week's worth of food and a bunch of beer in here. It's great. It'll keep it at all the way down to 0 degrees if you really want it to. Under here behind the fridge, you can see more of the electrical things. Here's the battery charger that we have on the outside, so you can just plug a cord into the side of the truck and it'll charge the house batteries. There's our shunt for the ground cable to measure how much current we're using, some propane lines. You also can access the primary fuel tank, fuel pump from in there. I'll just slide them like that. Up here above the fridge, we have this nice cabinet, all those stickers from our trip. You pull this pin here, it's just on heavy duty magnets. You pull it down, you got a nice workspace here. We have a little chain that connects this eyelet up to here so that you can put some heavy weight in there and not worry about it, but it's in the house right now. 2 pretty big cubbies in here, and then another nice tray up there that you can still access from the top. Nice for just throwing small stuff in there. Up at the front here on the couch, we have another little cubby. These are all really nice, all welded and framed cubbies like this one here. They're all on magnets. They open up super easy, close super easy, stay down. Super heavy duty. You're likely never gonna break them or have issues with them. There's that second battery down there I was telling you about, and there's a bunch of room in there to store whatever you want. Then in here is the heater. There's the vent for the heater, and if you look inside, the heater is fully enclosed in concrete board so that you don't have to worry about the exterior of it getting too hot and catching anything on fire or causing an issue. Another cool cubby in here is this under the floor cubby. It's held on with magnets, all welded frame again. And yeah, it's just a nice long flat thing. You can keep laptops, documents, big map books in here. And it's kind of secretive, so the idea being kind of like a smuggler's hatch, where if someone did accidentally break into the vehicle, you know, you could maybe wouldn't find it as easily. Just close it down like that. The flooring in here is all life-proof flooring with underlayment and insulation underneath it. Again, talking about insulation, all the walls here have 1/2-inch foam board insulation where we could fit it. The whole ceiling has insulation in it. I mean, and even the walls have the insulation quilted in it. As much as we could fit in the, you know, 3/4 inch panel or space that we had with the design. I did want to talk about how this whole interior was built. It is all a steel tube welded frame structure with these 1/4 inch birch ply panels hung around it. That way it's super rigid and super strong. It's welded into the body, so it'll never shift or move on it, and the panels just kind of hang on it. It was the lightest design that we could come up with that has the greatest strength. We've operated this truck pretty heavily and haven't had anything move or any issues, just because everything is built so stout. And then again, with the weight, we have the heavy duty Old Man Emu springs on this, and fully loaded up with all our gear for like a month-long trip. The springs are sitting right at about perfect ride height, which tells us that this thing is on par with another 4Runner that has all the gear, at least what Old Man Emu would have calculated out as a 4Runner setup for camping. So the weight in this thing isn't ridiculous. It's not that much more than stock. Okay, standing up now in the camper. I'm about 6'1", and I have plenty of headroom in here. You know, you could easily change or stand up and cook and do whatever you need. On the ceiling, we do have recessed lights in here that are on dimmer switches that are really nice. We also have the vent with the fan in there, and it's a two-way fan, so it could either pull air in or blow air out. Also, with the fan, we have this nice RV window in here that slides open, and it has a bug screen on it so that you can have that window open and the fan going and get a nice breeze through here and not worry about any bugs coming in. We do have the factory window up there that slides so that you can access the back of the couch for more storage, which is nice. And there's also full curtains the whole way around. I did want to comment on these roof panels. The whole roof piece is one solid sheet of 1/4 inch birch ply, which was very ambitious to get in here. And it did get a little bit chewed up on the insulation. I should have done it in 2 or 4 pieces, because one giant piece was just a little bit too much. And around the edges of these roofs, there's like a slight gap around them. It's not too bad. We were going to fill it in with either copper flashing, or we were thinking beer cans, or we were thinking webbing or like a felt tape. But we didn't want to like over customize it. This thing's already so custom, we don't want to make it even more personal. So that may be something that a future owner will want to do at some point, is just kind of put some nice decorative trim around here to clean it up, or even like a clear silicone if you liked that, would be really easy. But then with the bed platform, it's all just these expanded metal platforms, which I know it may seem a little weird to sleep on a giant barbecue grate, but it is awesome for the ventilation, because with the fan blowing in from the top and the window down low, you can get a great cross breeze right over you. You just put this big bar in these slots, and then the bed platform slides around this one too, and then this is our little hatch that you climb up through. And with a sleeping pad on it, it's super comfortable. There's a bunch of room up here for 2 people. I think it's overall about 9 feet long, so plenty of legroom for a tall person. The entrance hole is a little bit narrow, so it's probably better if you're a little bit on the skinnier side to climb up through there, but I mean, I'm a 180 pound 6 foot male, and I can fit through there with no issues. Another comment I wanted to make about the bed platforms, they're kind of loose on here now, but once the top goes down, the fabric comes in and it overlaps the edges and it clamps down on it really well. After a month and a half of driving down dirt roads and doing trails, these never moved on us once. And then we normally just put the beam that these rests on here and put a jacket or a sleeping pad on top of it, and when the roof comes down, it clamps down on top of it. And like I said, we've never had it move on us. There is also quite a bit of storage space up here when the top is closed. I mean, it's only about 9 inches tall, but it's enough to fit like a mummy bag that's in its stuff sack up there, and some pillows and maybe a jacket. And then when it is open, I mean, there's a bunch of room up there. If you were a child, you could sit up there probably. As an adult, it's not enough room, but another nice storage space in this truck. Also, with the roof, we added these welded hooks on these 4 corners. There's 4 of them here. The idea was that you could put like a big net across in here to help put jackets or sleeping bags. We never made one, but we were just trying to future-proof the truck when we were able to weld everything on, and it was super easy. I wanted to show you these curtains because they're pretty nice and custom made to the truck. They're all just on button clips, and they're on nice steel rails, so they just slide forward. There's another one over there, but I don't do it. And they are actual blackout curtains, so they're all around, so you can close these up, and if you're sleeping in like a Walmart parking lot or a rest stop, you can get a lot of privacy in here and kind of feel like you're trapped in a little bubble, which is nice at times. I did want to show the top coming down here, how you do have to toggle these switches to get it to kind of shut evenly. So here it's coming down. Altogether it probably takes like 30-40 seconds for it to come down, which isn't too bad when you think about most tents. You know, it's pretty even until it gets to maybe the last foot or so. You know, just keep watching it. I stop it at about the last foot, and then I come over to both the sides and just double check that they're tucked in so that you don't pinch the fabric. Going over to the other side. If you have like sleeping bags or jackets up there, sometimes they'll kind of push out on the fabric and you just gotta shove it back in. Just nice to double check, not have any issues. Then you come back and it's actually looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Maybe. There you go. And it shuts just down like that. You close up all your latches and you're good to go.
So here we are driving off the curb just to show kind of how comfy and smooth the suspension is. Just kind of rocks up like a boat. And there it is.
I just wanted to show the low range in this truck. So normally, first gear, pretty fast. Then pop it in low range at first gear, barely let off the clutch. Really can't go much faster than this, and I mean it'll just creep along at idle, about up whatever you want her to. Essentially just a big tractor at this point. This makes it a lot nicer getting up obstacles because you don't have to fight the clutch. You just kind of let it creep. It also makes it a lot safer going down steep hills or sketchy obstacles because you don't have to ride on the brakes at all. You can just put it in low range and leave it in gear and it'll do all the engine braking for you and is much more controlled. I want to say thanks for checking out my truck. This thing is fully ready to go as it sits right now. Everything has been gone through it. I mean, the only thing that we haven't taken apart is taking the dash off of it. Other than that, everything that's been gone through, new wheel bearings, new brakes, new suspension, new engine, new transmission, new transfer case, new exhaust, new drive shaft, full house in the back, cleaned up all the interior. I built this thing with plans to drive it on the Pan American Highway and anywhere else in the world that I wanted to. So it's fully ready to go to drive down to Argentina tomorrow if you want, or whatever you want to do. This thing's really nice for an expedition vehicle just because it is so small. It's a Toyota 4Runner, a first gen, so it's essentially a little truck. You can squeeze this thing through almost any trail you want with the transfer case and the front and rear lockers. This thing will climb through just about anything. You could probably even get it through the Rubicon if you wanted to. You may get some body damage, but it's a lot more capable than it looks with those lockers. The camper is really big inside. It does not feel like you're in the back of a 4Runner. It's very comfortable for just two people to make dinner and hang out if the weather's bad, or just if it's just one person, it's super comfortable. You could totally live back there. We did a 5-week-long trip this summer up to the Pacific Northwest, and had no issues with it. Yeah, we took it through a lot of tough trails, things that you could never even imagine squeezing a full-size truck, let alone a van or some earth roamer through. And it's a lot lighter and better constructed than, let's say, a four-wheel camper or some bolt-on camper system. It's super rigid. You can jump this thing if you really want, and everything will stay put and not bend or break. It's built tough and built to last. It's very waterproof inside. We got caught in quite a few real heavy rainstorms this summer. No issues, no leaks, super comfortable inside. And then we took it to Moab in the last spring, early in the spring when it was getting well down below freezing at night, and with the heater on. I mean, it's super cozy inside. Um, yeah, I hope it goes to a good home. I hope it'll go to someone who appreciates it for what it is, and will take it on the global expeditions that it deserves. Thanks. Bye.